The sky was too quiet for a war. High above the Pacific, a lone fighter cut through endless blue, its engine humming steadily in the thin air. Below, the ocean looked calm, almost peaceful, like the world had forgotten the chaos burning beyond the horizon. It was supposed to be a routine patrol. No enemy sightings, no urgent calls, just open sky and silence. Radio static whispered softly in the background, fading in and out like distant thunder. Everything felt normal, predictable, safe. But in war, silence never lasts. Then the radio crackled. A voice broke through the static, calm but tense. Multiple contacts. Incoming. The sky still looked empty, but something was coming. And it was coming fast.
At first, there was nothing, just sunlight stretching across an empty horizon. No movement, no shadows, only blue sky melting into blue distance. Then, tiny black dots appeared, so small they almost looked like dust on the canopy. Easy to miss, easy to ignore, but they were moving fast. Within seconds, the dots grew larger, spreading wider across the sky. 1 became 3, 3 became 5, and then the count kept climbing. This wasn't a patrol, this was a formation. A tight, deliberate wave of enemy fighters slicing through the sunlight, heading straight in. The silence inside the sky vanished instantly, because now it was clear this wasn't just contact, this was a swarm.
The shapes kept growing. Wings became visible, then fuselages, then the unmistakable outline of enemy fighters closing in through the glare of the sun. They weren't scattered. They were organized, flying in layers, moving with purpose, hunting as a pack. A quick glance wasn't enough anymore. The sky was filling fast. 1, 2, 5. The count didn't stop. More fighters slipped out of the sunlight, stacking behind the first wave like shadows, forming in real time. Then the realization hit. This wasn't a small engagement. This wasn't a chance encounter. There were too many, far too many. By the time the count settled, the truth was unavoidable. 13 enemy fighters against 1. And suddenly, the sky didn't feel big anymore.
The radio came alive instantly. Static burst through the silence, followed by a sharp, urgent voice cutting across the channel. "Break off! Repeat, break off immediately!" No hesitation, no confusion. The order was clear. Against those numbers, survival meant turning away. Disengage, gain distance, live to fight another day. The sky ahead was now crowded with enemy fighters closing fast, their formation tightening like a trap being pulled shut. The ocean below offered no cover. The sun offered no escape, just open sky and 13 enemies getting closer every second. The radio repeated the command, louder this time. "Do not engage." For a moment, everything slowed. The engine kept humming, the sky kept shining, and in that thin, silent space between orders and action, a decision had to be made. The order still echoed in the air. Break off. Do not engage. The safest choice was obvious. Turn away. Dive for distance. Let the sky swallow the danger behind. Fuel was enough to return. The path home was still open. Ahead, the enemy formation kept growing larger, darker, more defined against the sunlight. 13 fighters moving like a single organism, closing the gap second by second. The radio crackled again, waiting for a response, but none came. No confirmation, no refusal, just silence. Then, slowly, the transmission cut. The static faded. The channel went dead. No more orders, no more voices, just the engine, the open sky, and a choice no one else could hear. Without warning, the nose dropped. The aircraft tilted sharply forward, slicing down through the open sky in a sudden, aggressive dive. The engine roared louder as speed surged. The calm of seconds ago shattered instantly. Wind screamed past the canopy. The horizon vanished, replaced by rushing blue and blinding sunlight flashing across metal wings. It wasn't a retreat. It wasn't hesitation. It was a charge. Ahead, the enemy formation hesitated for a split second, just long enough to feel the shift.
This wasn't a lone fighter running. This was a lone fighter attacking. The distance collapsed fast. What was once a silent sky exploded into motion. Enemy wings turned sharply, breaking formation, diving to intercept. The trap was closing. But now it was no longer a hunt, it was a collision.
The sky erupted. Bright streaks of tracer fire tore through the air, cutting glowing lines across the blue. Enemy fighters peeled off one by one, diving hard, guns flashing in violent bursts. The silence was gone. Bullets snapped past, close enough to feel. Sharp flashes slicing through empty space where the aircraft had been seconds earlier. There was no time to think, only instinct, only movement. A sharp roll, a sudden pull, speed climbing fast. One enemy fighter overshot, racing past in a blur of metal and sunlight. For a fraction of a second, the target filled the view. Crosshairs aligned. A single squeeze of the trigger. The guns roared, and the sky changed forever. The burst was short, but deadly. Rounds ripped across the enemy fighter's wing, tearing through metal in a blink. For a split second, nothing happened. Then smoke. A thin gray trail spilled into the sky, twisting behind the damaged plane like a wound opening in midair. The formation broke instantly. What had been a confident swarm suddenly fractured, enemy fighters scattering in sharp, violent turns. The hunt was no longer simple. Below, the stricken aircraft began to fall, spiraling slowly at first, then faster, trailing fire as it dropped toward the endless ocean. One down. But the sky didn't calm. If anything, it grew more dangerous, because now the remaining fighters knew the truth. This wasn't an easy kill. This was a fight. The reaction was immediate. The remaining fighters tightened their circle, diving from above and climbing from below, turning the open sky into a shrinking cage. Tracer fire crossed from every direction, red lines stitching through the air with terrifying precision. There was no safe angle. A sharp turn barely avoided one burst. Another ripped past just behind, close enough to rattle the frame. The swarm wasn't hesitant anymore. They were angry. 13 had become 12, and now they wanted blood. The sky felt smaller by the second, compressed by speed and gunfire. Every movement had to be perfect. Every second mattered, because one mistake, just one, and the ocean below would claim another burning wreck. Then, everything changed in a single motion. Instead of diving away, the aircraft suddenly climbed, sharply, aggressively, cutting straight up into the blinding sun. The maneuver was reckless, almost unthinkable at that speed. For a moment, the sky turned white. Sunlight flooded the canopy, swallowing shapes and shadows. Enemy fighters hesitated, their view blinded by glare, their angles thrown off in an instant. It was a gamble, and it worked. The swarm lost formation for just a heartbeat, a tiny fracture in their perfect coordination. One fighter climbed too hard, another overshot completely. And in that split second of confusion, the impossible happened. The hunter lost control of the hunt, and the lone fighter finally had space to breathe. Out of the glare, one shape appeared too close. An enemy fighter burst through the sunlight, slightly off balance, climbing harder than it should have. The formation around it was still recovering, still trying to regroup, but this one was exposed. The distance closed instantly. No hesitation, no warning. A quick burst of fire ripped across the sky, the sound violent and final. Rounds struck clean, tearing through the fuselage in a flash of metal and sparks. This time, there was no delay. Flame erupted almost instantly, blooming bright against the pale sky. The damaged fighter rolled violently, losing control as smoke poured from its frame. 2 down. And now something unexpected spread through the swarm. Not confidence, not anger, doubt. The formation never fully recovered. Where there had been order, now there was hesitation. Fighters that once moved like a single machine began breaking apart, each one reacting a fraction too late, a fraction too differently. And in air combat,
fractions decide everything. Some pulled wide, trying to reset their angles. Others dove too hard, desperate to regain control. The sky that once felt like a perfect trap was now unraveling into chaos. Tracer fire still flashed, but it was scattered now, less precise, less certain. The balance had shifted. What began as a hunt was turning into something else, something unpredictable, because the greatest weapon in the sky wasn't always speed or firepower. Sometimes it was confusion, and now confusion was everywhere. Through the chaos, one fighter pushed too far. It broke from the others, diving aggressively, trying to end the fight in one decisive move. Fast, direct, desperate. For a moment, it looked like the perfect attack. Then it went wrong. The turn came too sharp, the angle too tight. In that split second, the distance collapsed. The sky narrowed into a single point. Metal, speed, and instinct colliding in midair. A quick pull, a sudden alignment, and the opportunity appeared without warning. One last burst of gunfire shattered the silence. The round struck clean. The enemy fighter shuddered violently, trailing smoke almost instantly. Its dive turned uncontrolled, spiraling downward in a widening arc toward the endless blue below. 3 down. And just like that, the sky went quiet again. But this time, everything had changed.
The reaction was immediate. The remaining fighters didn't press forward. They pulled away. One by one, the shapes that had filled the sky began turning outward, breaking formation, widening the distance. No final charge, no last attack, just retreat. The swarm that once closed in like a storm was now scattering across the horizon, shrinking back into the sunlight where it had first appeared. The gunfire stopped. No tracers, no explosions, no roaring passes, only the wind rushing past the canopy and the steady hum of a tired engine cutting through empty sky. Moments ago, it had been a battlefield. Now it was silent again, but not the same silence as before. This one carried smoke, echoes, and the fading shadows of a fight that should never have been survived.
With the sky finally clear, the aircraft turned slowly toward home. No victory roll, no triumphant climb, just a quiet heading back across an endless ocean that looked as calm as it had before the fight began. The engine still hummed, but it sounded different now, heavier, worn, carrying the weight of everything that had just happened. Wind rushed past the canopy, filling the silence left behind by gunfire and explosions. No radio calls came through, only open sky and distance. Behind, somewhere far beyond the horizon, smoke trails were already fading into nothing, erased by the same sky that had witnessed the impossible. What remained wasn't noise, not glory, not celebration, just a moment that would never fully be explained. One fighter, 13 enemies, and a decision made in silence that changed everything. Because sometimes history isn't written in loud victories, but in the quiet flights that make it back.